Okay, so we are on 28A, 4 lines from the top. So yesterday the Mishnah listed all the relatives that are postulatus that you can't have testify in your case. Um, and we found a Torah source for fathers and sons not being allowed to testify about each other. And now the Gemara is going to continue with sources for all the other types of relatives that are disqualified. Ashkechan banim lahadade. So we found the verse about sons. Banim alma minolan. Now, how do you know that this is a little oddly stated? How do you know that sons can't testify about other people? It seems to mean um, you can't. What it means is you can't have two sons or two brothers, let's say, or a father and a son, testify about other people, right? In other words, you can't have related witnesses related to each other. It's logical. It's not a verse in the Torah, but it's logical. Hidatanya, we have a brisa. You can't have edim zomim until both of them become disqualified. In other words, someone testifies about, or other witnesses testify about both of them that they were in a different place at the time that they claimed to have seen what they saw. Now, if it were the case that you could have brothers or fathers and sons uh, testifying about other people, in other words, witnesses of related people, nimsa eid zomim nerag be'edu sachiv. You could have an eid zomim could be killed by the testimony of his brother. How would that work? Say if two brothers could be witnesses together, then if they are found to be eidim zomim, each brother would be killed because of um, each brother would be punished um, because of the other one's testimony, right? Because without the other brother's testimony, they couldn't have achieved, or they would never have been able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. Because one witness, there's no consequence legally. Um, so you could not have this testimony could not be subject to hazama. Um,
Talking about four
uh,
people? Are we
Pardon me?
talking about four people? Two witnesses are brothers, and then two more are two other brothers. So they're four brothers, or no?
No, two others are regular brothers, um, but what the claim here is that without
So one of the there are four people, right, involved. So
right, but
what are we
only yeah, we're
saying?
only talking about one set of witnesses that are brothers. Okay, the original witnesses are brothers.
So they would be killed as a result of two other witnesses, which would make them Zomim, but the brothers aren't killing each other.
Well, without one of the brothers, the other wouldn't have been able to achieve the desired punishment, right? So he's relying on the each of the brothers can only accomplish what they set out to do with the participation of the other brother. Okay, one witness that one zomim, one witness who's shown to be an aid zomim, there's no consequence because as a single witness, he wouldn't have achieved anything. But with his brother, he could have achieved testifying together. He could have achieved that. Um,
Well, they're conspiring together, the two brothers. So
they're
what's the
conspiring
reason?
together, right? So it's only because his brother is testifying with him. And here's the kicker: the Gemara, the Gemara statement is Nimsa eid zomim nerag be'edu sachiv. So each brother is only being punished as an eid zomim because of the testimony of the other brother. Now, the testimony is not directly against him, but it's
Right.
because of his brother's testimony that he's being sent down the river. Okay, it's a little odd. And Rava objects. Amalei Rava
So
would tameh. So
you could also create the situation where there were two people that were not brothers, not related,
yeah,
and the other two Adim that came to make them Ede Zomamim, one of those was a brother of one of the first two. Or right? So that would
Right, but so you say, okay, so that's right. That's but what's like, how do you know? Oh, one of those is brother of one of the first two. Yeah.
right, right.
Okay, so don't allow that to happen. But the problem with the Adim Zomim case is you could, if you allowed two brothers to testify together, right? Then that means that testimony is not subject to Hazama. Why? Because in Rabbi Bar Chama's view, because the zomim the hazama punishment is being applied only because of the testimony of your brother. Because without the brother, there would be no kasher zamam lasos leachiv. Okay, it's a little weird. There's something about it I can't really put my finger on it that seems a little wrong. But let's see what Rava says. Litameich, if that's where you're going. Hadisnan, what about a Mishnah? Shlosha achin v'yachad mitzarifim lahem. What if you have four witnesses? Three of them are brothers, and then there's a fourth one, right? So, hare elu gimel edios v'hen zachas lazava. This is considered three different two. You can consider that three pairs of witnesses. Okay, so the one non-related guy with brother A is a pair of witnesses. The one non-related guy with brother B is a pair of witnesses, and the one non-related guy with brother C is a separate pair of witnesses, so you can allow that. And the Edu Sachas Lazama, when it comes to making them Edim Zomim, they all have to become Edim Zomim. Okay, it's not enough for one of the brothers to become an Eid Zomim. Why? Because you still have the other two pairs that are valid. Okay, so according to Rami Bar Chama, that wouldn't make sense. Nim say Zomim, Mishalim Momin, Be'edu Sachiv. So um, if you if you consider them three pairs, then each Eid Zomim would pay the money as a result of the brother's testimony. If you say they all have to become Eidim Zomim, so without all three brothers being made Eidim Zomim, nothing would happen, right? El Hazomim Mi'al Makasi. What do you
But you
say
have three
rather
of
that?
them. But wait,
Mhm.
three of them are brothers, right?
Yeah.
So perforce, al korcha, they at least two of them are conspiring together. So how could it almost would certainly show that one of them causes the other one to be a zombie. I mean, you get three out of four.
Right, but what if only one brother is disqualified as an Eid Zomim? Now, don't you still have two other pairs? The independent guy in brother A, the independent guy in brother B, even if brother C is knocked out as shown to be an Eid Zomim.
Yeah, but but he was still conjoined with somebody, right? One of the others, and therefore, and someone else would cause him, and then even if the other two were on the outside, one of them would cause one of those brothers to be. I mean, it just seems that the two brothers, in some manner, would be conspiring with each other. Or what do you want to say? That one aid, there was a brother plus a non-brother
Mm-hmm.
that testified. So those two would be the Eddie and the other two would cause them. So in that case, those two others who are brothers would cause this one of their brothers to be punished.
If Rami Bar Chama is correct, okay, that I think we're saying the same thing. If Rami Bar Chama is correct, that why can't you have two brothers together? How do you know? Because there you wouldn't have a possibility of Hazama. Um, because each brother would be in effect testify his testimony would be against his brother if there was a Hazama case, right? Because without him, there's no Hazama, right? Now, what about in the case of the three brothers? Okay, in the case of the three brothers, we should also say that's no good because the because since they all have to be shown to be a Hazama, and Eidim Zomim, since they all have to be shown to be Eidim Zomim, if that, then it's like each one's testimony is what's causing the other ones, excuse me, to be um, to be disqualified as by Hazama.
Right. That's what
So
I.
Nimsa is Shalom Zachiv. So that doesn't work for Rami Bar, right? So the fact that that they all have to be shown to be zomim in order for it to be an eid zomim, to work as eidim zomim, that shows you that brothers uh, um, would, by saying that they all have to be shown to be zomim, that disproves what Rami Bar Chama was saying. Rami Bar Chama wanted to say, if the brothers both have to become Eidim Zomim, if their testimony causes the other brother to be an Eid Zomim, it's no good, right? So that would be the case here. And yet the Mishnah says it can work. That all, if all three brothers and the other guy, of course, have to be shown to be zomim. So in other words, each one of their testimonies is what causes the other brothers to become zomim, and yet the Mishnah allows it.
Oh,
Allah
it does
zomim, Allah
allow
kasi.
that.
What? What?
The Mishnah allows the case of the four of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So their testimony would be good. They would not
Yes.
be. They would not. No one would become an Eid Zalman in that case.
No, they could become zomim if all four witnesses were shown to be zomim. So the fact that the Mishnah allows the testimony, nonetheless, let's say so. So does the testimony work if there's no hazama? Yes, right. That's what the Mishnah is saying. It's okay, it's good testimony unless they become edim zomim.
So how
But
could
by
they have
saying
all
that
four of them?
the three brothers plus the fourth guy is valid testimony, otherwise that disproves Rami Bar Chama's point.
So how could all four of them be Zalman unless you had another pair, another two that came
Yeah, of
along?
course there's another. Yeah, of course there's another pair that say all of you were somewhere else. You were all in Vegas with us at the time.
But why do we even consider four? Normally, you only need two witnesses. So the
Yeah,
judge
you do, but you know that you can have more than two witnesses, right?
have a
The
hundred of
the
them.
the the chiddush of this Mishnah is that if there are three brothers can testify, if there's a fourth non-related person with them, then what we do is we consider them split into groups, each brother together with the unrelated guy. So there's, instead of three brothers, there's three groups of witnesses. So they're not testifying, it's as if they're not testifying together. The fact that this works, but they all have to become, in order for them to become Eidim Zomim, they all have to be considered, proven to be Eidim Zomim. The fact that this kind of testimony works, in any case, when there's no Hazama, shows that it doesn't matter that the brother's testimony causes the other brother to be an Eid Zomim.
I mean that would seem to lend itself to corruption. I mean, these four people could conspire, and so they would have the court or the other party or someone would have to go out of the way to find two other people that would say all four of these were not in the same place and at the same time. It makes it a little harder to overcome the conspiracy.
Perhaps so. I don't know if
I mean, these four could be all someone, but you'd be harder to prove it, right? You'd have to find. I mean, rather if two people.
yes, but by the fact that but I don't see the concern, because since we're considering these to be three separate pairs of witnesses, so it doesn't matter that you have to find Hazama for all four of them, because if you find Hazama for one of them, you still have the other two pairs of witnesses.
But what I'm saying is all four of them could be lying, right? And it would be
Okay, well, that's always the case, right? You can have four people that are lying. What are you going to do, right? People can conspire even if they're not related.
that's
Right? The
right.
fact that there's a fourth unrelated person here is what the Mishnah is saying saves this testimony, right? It's not as corruptible as it's not corruptible enough because there's an unrelated guy together with each of the brothers. So it's like any other case of witnesses, right? Sure, you could have corrupt witnesses, but at least you don't have the factor that a pair of witnesses is related to each other, because each pair, as it were, is two unrelated people. Um, I mean, what we're doing here is really just a device to get around the fact that you have two unrelated people, an unrelated person and one of the brothers is two valid witnesses. The fact that you're adding on two more brothers, essentially the mission is saying, from if you want to look at it this way, that doesn't hurt the fact that there's one brother and one unrelated person. Add on more brothers. It doesn't that the fundamental nature of that pair doesn't change.
You could have 10 brothers?
Same, as long as there's one unrelated person.
Uh-huh.
Um, so anyway, so what's Ravo's answer? Like why um uh yeah, so what do you say about this Hazama mi al makase? What you have to say is that Hazama is not caused by your fellow witness testifying with you. Okay? Hazama is like an external thing. Okay. So how do I explain this? The hazama is not caused by your fellow witness testifying. Okay, the hazama is caused by the people who are the Ede hazama, the ones that are testifying against you, saying you were with us. Okay, that's what causes the hazama. So you say the same thing here. So Rabbi Bar Chama's argument. Um, uh, Rabbi Bar Chama's argument doesn't work, right? Because you say Hazam Yamakasi. So the whole idea that each brother is an Eid Zomim because his brother is participating with him in the testimony, that doesn't work. Elim Kain, so here we need another source. I never liked Rabbi Bar Chama's answer in the first place. Seemed a little odd. Like I said, I couldn't quite put my finger on why it didn't work, but um anyway,
Well,
Eliam
if it's
Kane. So
a
here's
Zama's outside factor, then the two, if
there's
doesn't
nothing to do with the fact that they're related.
right, exactly. So the two brothers become Zomamim because there's somebody else that causes them to become Zomamim.
Right. So how do we know that two brothers can't testify? We still have
Right,
no
exactly.
source for that. So the Gemara is going to try again. Elim Kane, lichtav kra uvein al avos. Remember yesterday we had the pasuk ubanim la yumsu al avos, right? So the Torah could have said bain in the singular. A son can't be punished for the father's sins. Iname heim al avos, or them could be used the plural, but without using the word banim, right? My uvanim. What about uvanim layumsu alavos? That sons. The word sons is the key here. Sons cannot be killed on behalf on because of their fathers. Afilu banim lealma. That means even. Somehow as the Gemara often does, it takes this extra word to prove what it wants to prove, and so we're going to apply it to the idea that brothers can't be testifying about somebody else either. Not just that they can't be responsible for their father's punishment, but they can't be responsible together for somebody else's punishment. Okay. Ashkelon Krovehav. Okay, we have the pasuk Ubanim la yumsu al avos.
Would you say then that in that case that if there are two people that testify, they're not related. They testify X did Y and so forth. Two other people come and make them Zomamim. They come from outside and say, no, you weren't with us. But those two outside people are both brothers. So their testimony that would not work to make the first group Zomamim?
Yeah, of course not, because they're brothers. Now that we have shown that that brothers can't testify about anybody, that brothers can't be witnesses, then they can't be witnesses for Hazama either.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Ashkelon Kraviav. So we have a pasuk Avos that tells us that related people can't be testifying about fathers or sons. What about if they're related through the mother? Amakra Avos Trezimne. It says Lo yimsu avos al banim, uvanim lo yimsu al avosam, or al avos, I forget. So why does it say it twice? Himenin lekrove ha'av, tneuin lekrove aim. So since we have an extra verse to attribute something to, and we already know about paternal relatives, so we'll apply this to maternal relatives. Ashkechan l'chova. Okay, so now we understand that lo yumsu means you can't be put to death. In other words, you can't be punished because of your relative, right? Lizchus minon. Maybe a relative can testify on your behalf, right, as a defense witness. Amakra yumsu trezimne. It says lo yumsu avos avani uvanim lo yumsu al avos. So it uses the punishment twice, right? So since we already know from the first one, we already know from the first one that you can't testify as a prosecution witness. So we'll use the second one as a defense to tell you about a defense witness. Okay, so we've been talking about lo yumsu, that you can't be put to death because of your relative. So bedine mamanos milal, and how do you know to apply this to civil cases? Then it says you should have one law. Mishpat hashava lachem. You don't have different rules of jurisprudence for capital cases versus civil cases. You use the same rules of evidence, and so if relatives are not permitted to testify in a capital case, they would also not be permitted to testify in a civil case.
Didn't we
Amarav.
hold in Gemara that's made it yesterday, the day before, that made a distinction between dine nefashot v'dine mamonot?
Okay, yes, so it's true. I thought you were going to ask that. There are some rules that are different, but in the context of determining who can be a witness, this pasuk Mishpat Echad Yelachem tells you that you don't have any differences in determining who can be a witness. Although you're right, there are other ways in which capital cases differ. Amarav, Achi Abba lo yoid li hu uvenova chasano. My father's brother can't testify about me, my uncle, and that includes him and his son-in-law, as we saw in the Mishnah. Afani lo oid lo ani uvani uvachasani, and I also cannot testify about my uncle, nor can my son nor my son-in-law. Mar says, Vamai, why not? Have a shlishi barishon, right? If you're talking about your uncle and your son, there are three degrees of separation, right? You've got a third level relative. In other words, look at the uncle. The uncle has a brother. The brother has a son. That's Rav, and Rav has a son. That's the third level. Right? Vanan sheni b'sheni. All the cases in the Mishnah were people who were separated only by 2 degrees. So sure, Rav can't testify about his uncle because they're 2 degrees away, right? But Rav's son is 3 degrees away from Rav's uncle. So how do we know that? So Sheni Barishon Tanan. We saw that people separated by 1 or 2 degrees are disqualified. Shlishi Barishon Lotanan, but we don't have anything in the Mishnah that's 3 degrees separated. Gemara says, well, actually, maybe we do. My Chasan, what are you talking about when the Mishnah says that the son and the son-in-law? We thought that meant that if I can't testify about my father, neither can my son or my son-in-law. But what now we're going to say it means neither can my son nor my son's son-in-law. So that's 3 degrees of separation. So we're saying that is in the Mishnah. Chasan beno, the son's son-in-law. The least they ben beno. Okay, well, in that if you're just trying to demonstrate 3 degrees of separation, why resort to the son-in-law, right? Say your son about your father, you can't testify, your son can't testify, your grandson can't testify. That's 3 degrees. Why would you say your son can't testify and your son-in-law can't testify? Why go horizontal for the 3rd degree instead of vertical? The answer is milsa agavorche kamash malan debal kishto. It's just also telling you that yes, I could have said the grandson is 3 degrees away, but also it's telling you a chiddush, as it were, that even the son-in-law even your son-in-law is, even though you might think, well, the son-in-law would have the same rule as the daughter is only 2 degrees separated from the grandfather. So maybe we would say that her spouse, the son-in-law, your son-in-law, maybe we would say he's also only 2 degrees separation because really his relationship is derived through his wife, and we'll say he's like his wife. So Gemara says, so the Mishnah is telling you, no, that is considered the degree of separation, right? The son's wife is an extra degree of separation, or sorry, the daughter's husband is an extra degree of separation.
Is he allowed to testify? I don't remember. The Mishnah says he can testify or not.
Who? The
The son-in-law
son-in-law? The son-in-law cannot. If you
cannot.
can't testify, neither can your son or your son-in-law.
Son-in-law is not even related, though.
Yeah, so that's what the Mishnah is telling you that that's considered a relationship. He's part of the family. Remember, we're this isn't for Yerusha or anything. This is just trying to to parse out who is suspect as an unreliable witness.
Right.
So
Okay.
listen, you could have an estranged child. So could that does that mean that the child is now valid as a witness? No. The relationship is what it is. So it's telling us that's the same. Um, it's the same for a marriage, right? That once you're related, you're related. Okay, so now the Gemara says, wait a
So,
minute.
and
So
yet,
you
are we
want
learning from that that the grandnephew can also not testify because he's equivalent to the same degree of separation?
the grandnephew
Well, that's
explain
what
the
we were talking
relationship?
about. That's what we were talking about, right? That
Yeah,
was
right,
the
right.
grandson of the of
Of
the
yeah,
of the uncle.
of your father. If you're the central
Right.
point here, you can't testify about your father or your uncle, and neither can your son.
So we're learning that from the son-in-law, basically.
Um,
Same degree of
yes,
separation.
yes, right. The other to tell you, Rabbi
How far
Chia.
does this
What
go?
about?
Can we go to the fourth generation, the fifth generation?
Doesn't appear to be the case. No, you have to demonstrate that that's one of the cases in the Mishnah, and that's not the case. Rabbi Chia. What about what Rabbi Chia taught? Shmona avos shein esrim v'arba. There are 8 categories of relatives that are disqualified from testimony, which 8 categories, which includes 24 types of people. How's that? Um, so hane tlosin v'tartin. So in our Mishnah, everything is tripled, right? Because if you're disqualified, then so is your son, so is your son-in-law, right? So if there are 8, 1 second. 1 second. Yeah. Um, Now, if your son's son-in-law is also included, then there's four people included in each category, right? So instead of saying 8, there's 8 categories and each has 3 in it. It's 8 categories and each has 4 in it, right? It should be not 24, it should be 32, 4 times 8. Um, so if Rabbi Chia says he if he's enumerating them and he says there's 24, it means it's 8 times 3, not 8 times 4. So we don't accept. So Rabbi Chia doesn't accept the third degree separation. Um, Okay, we're gonna back off of that. We're gonna say that when the Mishnah said your son and son-in-law, it means your son and son-in-law, not the next generation, not your son's son-in-law. It really means what we thought it meant in the first place. It means your son's son-in-law. But my karele Hasan beno. Why does Rav call him your son's son-in-law? Um, we're considering it another degree of separation. Since he comes through marriage, this is what you were saying, Ken. It's like a different generation, like the separation, uh, the distance from the family. That because he's only married into your family, that's like a third generation. Okay. Yahweh's Gemara says, if that's so, Havale Shlishi B'Sheni. So even so, it's a third level relative. V'Rav Achsher Shlishi B'Sheni. So if you're going to say it's another degree of separation, whether it's a new generation or whether it's through a marriage. So still, it's a third degree, right? You've got 1 degree from the father to you, 1 degree from you to the daughter, 1 degree from the daughter to her husband. So it's still three separate degrees of separation.
But he's kosher, and that third one is kosher, right? Isn't that what Rav says? According to Rav.
Yeah, that's so. So we're saying that in that case, if Rav says that Rav does include the third degree of separation as being postulatus, and so you get back to the question of Rabbi Chia, right? So why don't we say it's it's um it's the 8 categories times 4?
No, Rav
Um,
says Rav Aksha Shlishi B'Sheni. Isn't that saying that he's kosher le'edu?
yeah. So that contradicts Rabbi Chia. That was our question, right? Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Chia says it's 8 times 3. Right? Each category has 3 people in it. But Rav, if he's saying there's a third degree of separation that is included, then that would be 8 times 4. Oh,
But the this third generation, whoever he is, this son-in-law, he would be permitted to testify according to Rav, right?
yeah, but your son-in-law would not, and that is so would he? Oh,
That's what it says.
maybe
Rav Aksher Shlishi B'Sheni.
yeah. Okay, so maybe Rav would say you're permitted. Yeah, that could be. Yeah. Ella Rav Yamar Rabbi Elazar. How can we square Rav's ruling? We'll go with Rabbi Elazar. He follows Rabbi Elazar in Tanya. Rabbi Elazar Omer Kishem Shachia Baloyitli Hu V'Nava Hasano. Just as my uncle, my father's brother, can't testify about me, nor can his son or his son-in-law. Kach ben Achiaba Loyitli Hu V'No. So similarly, my cousin, the son of my father's
Uncle.
brother, my first cousin, lo yoid li hu v'no, neither he nor my first cousin once removed, v'chasano, or his son-in-law. Okay, so that's clearly a three levels of separation. Because me to my father to his brother, um, the brother, and the brother to the son. Um, 1 second. That seems like 4. 1 second. Mm, yeah, so my cousin, my first cousin is three degrees of separation away, and so that's what Rabbi Lazar says, and Rab is following that view. So the fact that
Well,
Rabbi Chia
isn't that a
disagrees,
kasha?
so he
Isn't that a
disagrees.
kasha the Rav? Because Rav seemed to say Aksha Shlishi B'Sheni just above that.
1 second.
Well, that's what the Gemara says now. Akati, the next line, Akati have it shlishi b'sheni. That he would say yes, and
Oh
Rav
yeah,
says
right,
Rav
right, right.
actually
Yeah, so
shlishi
Akasev is
b'sheni.
Shlishi B'Sheni. So V'Rav Achsher Shlishi B'Sheni. So Gemara says Rav Savar Kavasi B'Chada Pali Galei B'Chada. So he follows Rabbi Lazar about the nature of the relationships, but he disagrees with Rabbi Lazar, and he does allow the third degree relative to testify.
Mhm.
My time at the Rav. So what's Rav's source? The Amar Kra. Pasuk says Lo Yimsu Avos Albanim Uvanim Lo Yimsu Alavos. So he's kind of parsing the pasuk differently. Lo Yimsu Avos Albanim Uvanim. Right? Put the comma in a different place. So L'Rabos Dor Acher. That includes Banim Uvanim, another generation. So by including another generation, Rav takes from that that fathers can't be testified about by their sons or their grandsons, right? So, and a grandnephew would also be included. That's a third level to a first level, right? That whole third level of the family tree, what we're saying is now disqualified. Um,
So what, is Rav changing his opinion, or is he just learning this
no,
different?
no, this is his
What
source, right?
his source?
The saying that the third level of the tree is disqualified.
So wait, so how does that stem with what Rav said before? Rav Achshar Shlishi B'Sheni.
Because the third level, just the fact that the third level can't testify against the top level doesn't imply that he can't testify against the second level, right? So the first cousin once removed is okay. The he can't testify against the grandfather, but not the grandfather's son.
Wait, he can testify
He
against.
he can't. Okay, think of the family tree as a hierarchy, right? You got the grandfather at the top. Okay, so the grandfather has two sons, right? Of course, neither son can testify about the grandfather, right? One of the sons has a grandson. Okay, now Rav says, can the grandson testify about the grandfather? No. Can the grandson testify about the uncle? He's going to say yes.
That seems to fly in the face of what we said before all along.
Um,
Well, I guess that's Rav's opinion. Rav is he's Poleg on whoever the other Tana was, or Amor or whatever, right? Because
yeah,
we've been learning along that you can't
yeah,
testify against the
I'm
uncle.
thinking that maybe what's going on here is we're talking about, um, yeah, if it's an uncle, there's still the 2 degrees of relationship, right? Your father's brother. So that's not the scenario that I should have described. The scenario I described is a half, maybe um, let's say the son-in-law, where the can we have a case where the brother, where the two people stemming from the grandfather are not, um,
But
maybe
it
if it's the
would make sense
grandfather's
what you were
wife has a
saying.
son.
According to what the Gemara says about Rav, what you were saying seems to make sense that that the grandson could testify against his uncle. But that's Poleg on what we were learning before. I guess according to whoever his Baal Plugta was or whatever. I don't remember who that was,
Hmm.
but that, I mean, that's what the Gemara seems to saying. What you just said. He can't testify against his grandfather, but he could testify against his uncle. But the other Plukta doesn't hold that way. I mean, that's the way I'm understanding this now.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. Hold on one second. So what did Rav allow? He allowed the grandnephew, right? Brother, son. Mm. Okay, I think this is maybe this is what it is. Rav said you can't have a grandnephew testify, right? That means your grandfather's brother, right? That no, that he says that is that okay? One second. Yes, that's okay, but I mean that is not okay. That is considered postulatus. So that is you're going up two, but that doesn't mean that the the son of your granduncle is also postulatus, right? The fact that he's one further down on the tree doesn't matter, right? Because you have to go all the way back up the tree and then down, rather than go halfway up the tree and jump across, if that makes sense.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, I look at the Gemara where it says that apparently Rav Elazar is cholek on Rav, where he says the third generation can testify, cannot, but Rav says he can about the second generation. I mean, that seems to
Yeah,
be
so that's Rebbe Lazar, right? So
Rav.
Rebbe Lazar says Ubanim, right? What does he get from Ubanim? That the grandnephew can't testify about the great uncle. Okay, but he also says, um,
He can't testify about the uncle either. But Rav seems to say that the grandnephew can testify about his uncle. Rav Akshay Shlishi B'Sheni.
right, right. No, no, he's not. So that's not what we're saying. We're saying that Shlishi B'Sheni now means your first cousin once removed. Okay, you cannot testify about your granduncle, but you can testify, according to Rav, about your granduncle's son. Whereas Rabbi Lazar says, no, you can't, because they're only one level apart on the tree. But Rav says you have to go all the way up the tree and then down the tree, so it's further away.
So grandnephews, he can
Your
testify.
granduncle's son, that's your first cousin once removed, right?
Yeah.
So Rav says you're not related. And Rabbi Lazar says you are related, closely enough related.
Grand uncle's son. Isn't that his uncle?
No, your granduncle's son. You have a father. Your father has a father. It's your grandfather. Your grandfather is a brother. Your grandfather's brother's son is your cousin,
Yeah.
right? You have a grandfather. Your grandfather has a brother. Your grandfather's brother's son is your cousin. First cousin once removed,
Uh-huh.
right? You following?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So the Gemara just wraps up by saying Rabbi Lazar Albanim or Rachman Psuli Diavos Shali Albanim. That so Rabbi Lazar is looking at it differently. They're using the same pasuk, but they interpret it differently, as we just said. Amar Rav Nachman, Achi Chamosi Lo Yaili. This is really like Yavamos. Uh, the mother my mother-in-law's brother. Okay, my wife's mother's brother. Okay, so my uncle by marriage. Um, is postulatus, can't testify about me. Ben achi chamosi lo yaili, and also his son, okay, who is my wife's cousin, okay, but not my cousin by marriage, also too close a relative. Ben achos chamosi lo yaili. Um, what about my mother-in-law's sister's son? Okay, so in other words, same relationship. Instead of the mother-in-law's brother, we're talking about the mother-in-law's sister, right? So her son also can't testify about me. The Tanatuna. Okay, so all right, so Rav Nachman is saying that your wife's uncle and aunt and your wife's cousin is also related, too closely related to you. Okay, Tanatuna, and we have this in a Mishnah. Bal achoso uval achos aviv uval achosimo hein uvnein l'chasnein. We're flipping a little bit, but you have a sister. Your sister has a husband, um, or your father's sister, so your aunt. Um, she has a husband, so your uncle by marriage, also possible. Uvala chosimo, or your aunt on your mother's side has a husband, so your uncle by marriage is also postulatus. Hein uvnein v'chasnein, also them and their sons-in-law. Okay, so this accords with Rav Nachman. Okay, Amar Vashi. Excuse me. Ki havina ben be'ula ibaylam. When I was with Ula, they asked the question as follows: Achi chamiv mahu. What about your father-in-law's brother? Okay, so your wife's father's brother. Your wife's. So we just talked about your wife's sister or your wife's brother, right? Um, so her siblings and step siblings. What about her parents? So obviously your wife's father-in-law is related to you. What about your wife's father's brother? In other words, your wife's uncle. Um, And what about ben achi chamiv mahu? And what about that person's son, or ben achos chamiv mahu, or if it's on the mother's side, right? The father-in-law's sister's son. What about that? Amalan. So says to Nisua, we have a Mishnah. Achi v'achi aviv v'achi imo. Your brother and your father's brother and your mother's brother. Hey, so it's explicit in the Mishnah. Okay, that wasn't the question was stranger than the answer because we know the answer. It's in our Mishnah. Rav Ikla Lemizban Givile. Rav went on a trip. He was on a business trip. He was selling parchments. Balmine. They asked him, Mo Shiyayid Adam Be'eshes Chargo. Okay, what about a stepson? Can a person testify about his stepson's wife? Okay. Um, so he said, Basura Amre Bal Kishta. In Surah, they say that the wife has the same rule as the husband, right? But Pumbedisa Amre Isha Kabbalah. And in Pumbedisa, they say the wife is, sorry, they said the same thing but differently. In Surah, they said it as follows: husband is like a wife. And in Pumbedisa, they say the wife is like a husband. But it's the same principle, right? They just said it, phrased it differently. But what's the source? How do you know that a wife is treated the same as the husband? Tichsiv, Ervas achi avicha lo segale, el ishto lo sikrav dodaschahi. Talking about the rules of incest, um, don't don't sleep with your achi avicha, your father's brother, and also his wife, so your aunt by marriage, dodas chahi, because she's your aunt. V'halo eshes dodohi, she's not your aunt, she's the wife of your uncle, right? Miklal isha kabbalah, so it shows you that she's just as much your aunt as your uncle is your uncle. We treat the wife the same. Okay. Ubal imo huvanava chasana. Another thing in the Mishnah was the mother's husband, um, Baal Imo, your mother's husband, is Pasilatus, and also his son and his son-in-law. Beno Hainu Achiv, right? So wait a minute. Your mother's husband's son is your half brother, right? So it doesn't depend on your mother. He's your brother. He's a first degree relative. Um,
Wait, but this is the mother is married to someone else, so that's a stepfather, right?
um, no, this is one
Yeah,
second.
otherwise, you're not talking about his own father. It's just talking about a stepfather.
Yeah, it's talking about a stepbrother. No, a half brother. A half brother, right?
So this is a brother from the
Your
same
mother
mother,
remarries,
and she had a
and
brother.
her and your stepfather already has a son. So that's your stepbrother.
But this is a half brother, not a stepbrother.
Right. So that's what the one second. Wait.
The stepbrother's not related, so it must be a half brother, right?
Right. So the okay, so the Gemara's first assumption is your mother remarried, and together with her new husband, they had a son.
That's a half brother.
That's a half brother. So half brother is a brother, right? So the
Right.
Gemara answers, no, that's not what it means. We're talking about, it calls it a brother's brother, but it seems to mean the stepfather already had a son from somebody else, right? So that person is unrelated to you by blood, right? Your mother married this guy who also had a son, right? So that's what we're talking about, Baal Imo,
Stepbrother.
right?
Stepbrother.
Which is what we thought in the first place, I think.
Right.
Um, Amalahu. So, but Rav Chisda said to them, "Oh, sorry, I missed something." Um, Rav Chisda achsha b'achiach. Rav Chisda says actually that case is not a relative, right? Person can testify. Your stepbrother. Amrulay lo shamiel la chadra Yirmiyah. What about what Rabbi Yirmiyah said? Amalahu lo shamili. I didn't hear about that. Like I didn't know that. Kolomar lo svirali. What he's saying is the Gemara is saying he's saying that I don't hear that. Like I don't agree with Rabbi Yirmiyah. Hihachi hainu achiv. So in that case, you have to ask the question. So what does the Mishnah mean, right? When you say Baal Imo, who uvino, right? Isn't that your brother? right? If you think it's not your stepbrother, but your half brother, it's your brother. So Gemara says Tana Achiv min ha'av v'Ktani Achiv min ha'em. What how we're explaining the Mishnah is whether it's through your father, that your half brother through your father, or your half brother through your mother. Um, okay.
So it's
Rav Chisda.
not even talking about a stepbrother then. Because it seems to me that's Pshita, that they're not related. At least according to Rav Chisda.
Say again.
So, and we're not talking about a stepbrother because they're not related, according to Rav
Right,
Chisda.
we're talking about half brothers. Right, right.
But does Rabbi Yirmiyah still hold that the stepbrother
Yeah,
would be puzzle?
that's right.
That's rather strange.
Hmm, okay. All right. I mean, I could give you scenarios where it's not so strange. You know, they grew up together. They're not blood related, but they
All
grew up
right.
together.
So what's the
But yeah, I mean, you have a good question. It's not doesn't seem to be this quite the same as a blood relative. But then you also have relatives. You could ask the same thing about marriages, right? Like, why consider someone who's related by marriage to be your relative? Because there's a family closeness, right, that you can presume might be there. So the same thing you could apply to a stepbrother, half to a stepbrother.
Well, who do we paskin like? Rav Chisda or Rav Yirmiyah regarding the
Oh,
step?
I don't know. Good question. I didn't even think about it. I'm busy trying to keep track of all the relationships here. I didn't even think of that. I don't know. Um, uh, maybe the Gemara will tell us in the end. I'm not sure. All right. So actually, it's already 20 to 9. So despite the fact that we only got halfway through the Amud, I think we'll have to call it here. And with apologies to David, see if we can catch up in the next few days.
It gets a
But
little
yeah,
complicated. It does get a bit complicated.
it is complicated. And yeah, it's coming along. All right, we'll just have to put our noses to the grindstone here and try to catch up. Okay, have a good day, everybody.